We're live, Paul.
Oh, good. All right. So I'm thinking gumption. You used a different word. What was it? Uh, uh,
Motivation.
Motivation. And then a lot of the people that responded with bits to talk about, and I'm going to leave it up to you to decide what bits we're going to talk about. But I think where we're going is very different from where they are going. Does that seem about right?
Yes, a little bit, but I think after we finish these points, we can go and look at them and comment on them.
Okay. All right. And I want to say uh, um, this is the Andreas show because I mean, we've been working together for like what, 4 or 5 years now, something like that.
Yeah, 4 years. Yes.
Yeah. Um, and this is the first time you said that you want to do a podcast on a certain topic or a YouTube video live thing, whatever we're doing. And,
Yeah.
um, and it's like, cool, cool, cool. So I'm going to leave the driver's seat up to you. And you even made slides and stuff for this.
Yes, I'm a visual guy, so it helps.
Okay. All right. Um, and then I'm observing the chatty chat, and you said something about like when people type into the chatty chat that it'll appear on the big screen or something.
Yes, sir. I'm activating that right now. Lots
Okay.
of buttons.
I've got a couple of things that I want to make sure that I talk about,
Hmm.
but I'll talk about them when you want me to talk about them. But but first of all, let's talk about what is the problem. What is the problem we're trying to solve?
Yes, I think that homesteading it's really fun. Uh, it matches with the principles of a lot of people, but in practice, it can be repetitive, isolating, mm, boring sometimes too. If you're not doing things correctly, it can be overwhelming. It can be very costly, and as the years go by, the motivation to keep doing stuff and the gumption too, you start acting on it, disappears. So I think that that's a big problem, and I'm trying to show a graph that exposes how many homesteads are failing nowadays, and it's a lot. So at this rate, this lifestyle might disappear, and I think talking about it is important right now.
So, just so everybody can know that we've got some varying perspective. I'm in Montana, and you're where you are is like about as opposite to Montana as exists.
Yes, as you can see in the background.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, what you tell everybody where you're at?
I'm in one of the last patches of tropical dry forest in Colombia. So we have two very strong seasonal changes of very wet and very dry, but it's always very hot.
Right. I think. I mean, we've talked many, many times about what it's like there. I believe one time you told me like at on your property the coldest it has ever been. The whole time you've been there, when we converted it to Fahrenheit, it was 68 degrees Fahrenheit. Is like, oh man, that is the very, very coldest, like for just a moment. Everything
Yeah.
else has always been way above that, but for this one moment, it got all the way down to 68. Whereas, like, it's 67 in my office right now.
Yeah.
That's like, yeah,
And
that's normal for me.
fun fact, I feel chilly when we drop to those temperatures. So
Oh, jeez.
yeah.
Okay. All right. Um. Ooh. Okay. So what are we looking at here?
This is the number of farms that on homesteads at the U.S. that um, are started.
Well, now it says farms, and my first thought is like farms are very different from homesteads.
Yeah,
And then you're saying homesteads as if farms and homesteads are the same. And I know that there's probably a lot of people um, in the world of permaculture and homesteading, and they think that they're the same. And in fact, I would bet 90% of people think that they're the same. And I want to make a stand and say, no, I think, and maybe I'm wrong, I think that they are very different. I think that a farm, your primary function is to make money, and you're going to make decisions in order to meet that profit need, in order to be able to make money. And sometimes, if you have enough acres, sometimes those decisions become very poor decisions, um, by the standards of permaculture or organic, because it's like if you've got this enormous field of something that you're growing and things start to go sideways, the temptation for non-organic stuff becomes rather substantial. Whereas if it's
yes,
a homestead or a garden, it's like, oh, okay, damn, the end. And it's like it's a different mindset for decision making between the two. I think homesteads are going to be more about feeding you and your family first and foremost. Um, and if there happens to be a bounty of something, you might sell that. But profit motivations are secondary, maybe even tertiary, instead of being the primary, which is a farm. A farm, it's going to be primary.
totally agree. I think a good difference in words. The farms are extraction, and homesteading is stewardship.
Ooh, I like that. Yeah, yeah. And I think that the stuff that I advocate for is going to be for not farms.
Yeah,
And
but it's very hard to find data on homesteading. So this was the best I could find,
okay.
and it's a parallel. So if this is happening in farms, mostly concentrating the land in a few corporations, then my guess is that homesteads follow that same trend.
So um, I want to, there's another thing I want to say really quick before I forget, and maybe I've already forgotten it now that I'm saying it. No, I remember now. I think that everything about a homestead becomes 20 times more delightful and 20 times easier to do things when you have built up your infrastructure. Um, and so, like, if you haven't built a gate and you're having to like in order to move in and out of a gated area, then I think that it's going to be a lot more work to move in and out of that area than if you do have a well functioning gate, a well made gate. And then, of course, if you have a poorly made gate, or, it's better, but, you still need to work on your infrastructure to have a well made gate. I see Samantha is typing in the chatty chat. Do you want to make her a talking head?
Yes, I'm
Okay.
sending her the invite right now. Hey, Samantha.
So, I mean, Samantha does a lot by herself, and uh, but I also kind of think that the way that Samantha is wired is different than the way a lot of people are wired. All right, I've got two big things I really want to talk about, but I'm going to bring them up when you tell me to, Andreas. So how would you like to proceed with this event that you are the director of?
Okay. So I guess one of the questions I've been asked by friends and family the most is if a permaculture homestead is actually possible. If it's a dream kind of thing, or if it's something practically that has been replicated thousands of times around the world. So I wanted to have your perspective on that. Like, is it actually possible, or is it something that it's way too expensive, way too time consuming? What do you think about that?
This is definitely possible. I mean, I've been to places where it's rather dreamy. They're doing an amazing job. Um, I've also been to a lot of places where they say they're doing an amazing job, and it's like, well, by I suppose certain definitions, sure. Um, I think that a lot of people who choose to head down the road of permaculture and homesteading, I've seen choices made where they they make the whole thing 20 times more challenging and difficult than they need to. Um, I think that a really common one is the idea of people who are trying to grow some food, how it's like the only way that they'll grow food is if they've got these $1,000 containers that look like horse troughs. And then they have to go out and buy soil to put in the horse trough looking thing. And then they can only grow in that. And it's like, why? Why would you? So they travel a path that has far more work and expense than what seems wholesome to me, what seems easy to me. And so because of that, then I can see how they're easily discouraged. And discouragement would be a primary thing that kicks your gumption in the nuts. I mean, if it's like, if it's going to take this enormous amount of work to grow a potato plant, then it's kind of like, fuck it. I'm just going to go buy it at the fucking grocery store. And I do think most of the YouTube gardening stuff I've seen where they're like, oh, it's so easy. They say so easy, and this is gardening 101 and stuff like that. But it seems to me like they're going to spend $5,000 and put in $5,000 worth of their time to grow $1,000 worth of food. And I kind of feel like, and they don't think there's another way. They don't think that there's any way to do it faster, easier, or cheaper. And that's what I want to convey is stuff that's like, I mean, the idea of hugelkultur, or even not doing, and that's so many people are certain that the only way that they can have a garden is it has to be flat, that they can't garden anywhere else. And it's like, no, the flat is to facilitate a tractor. And it's like, if you don't have a tractor or own a tractor, I mean, I have a tractor, but the way that I do it is such that I choose to make land in such a way that a tractor cannot possibly get in there. And that is the shape of the gardens that I make. All right, Andreas, you said, is it possible? And my short answer is yes. And of course, I've got longer answers for everything. Hi,
Yeah.
Samantha, you're here.
Hey, I'm here. Hey. I'm
Nice,
so
Samantha.
glad to talk about this. I think this is such a good subject.
It is a delightful subject. I think it is something that is like I suspect that as we talk about this, that Samantha she will not be able to comprehend the questions because
Oh,
I think that Samantha is one of those rare people that's like um, gets up in the morning, leaps out of bed, and wants to go do all the things with all of her animals and all of her gardens. And before she knows it, it's dark outside and she has to stop. And she
yeah.
still doesn't stop. She's like, no, I've got like flashlights and headlights and,
Oh, yeah. You got
and
to have your headlamp.
lights. I can keep going.
Yep. You can go until you can't go anymore. And then that's why
And,
you're undead.
and
Because you had
so
to stop.
whereas there's the people that struggle with gumption, I don't think Samantha's one of them. And so when people say I'm struggling with gumption, I think Samantha will look with a dazed expression like, what does that mean?
Don't you have any adrenaline and fear and terror and windstorms coming to beat you up? And I mean, it's fear, right? It's like, I have to because it's coming. And
So
whatever it is.
terror driven gumption.
Oh, yeah. This is
Okay.
adrenaline. Yeah. Well, because winter's coming, right? And then
Always.
it is. And then a lot of times, like winter's nearly over, which means spring's coming. And it is your one chance to get it all done. You know, you have to do it on time. Otherwise, you missed it. And one of the things I put in the chat on Permies is like, the thing that keeps me going is knowing that I get to play again next year. Right? Like if I missed it, I get to play again next year, right? I'm going to do better because, oh, well, this time I didn't get my garlic in on time. And so next fall, I'm going to do it. Or this year, I didn't quite do whatever it was, or I did it poorly, or I missed, you know, just whatever happens. And I get to play again. So that makes me happy.
All right, Andreas, you are the conductor of this this thing. How would you like us to proceed now?
Got it. I think that this question, I wanted to start here because I think the three of us, and most likely everyone who's watching right now, have something wrong in our heads and have this foolish idea that we can change the world and live a different kind of lifestyle. But I think this question was more directed towards people who live in a city and and they get discouraged even before starting. You know, that's something that I've seen a lot in friends, and is that they don't even get to the point of visualizing doing it because they put uh, like obstacles mentally even before getting there. So, what advice would we give to people who have not experienced this? Um, maybe they should experience it first somewhere that it's already working.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, I think that helps a lot.
I do think that helps a lot. But yeah, because I do think that there's a lot of people that they're like I'm gonna do a garden this year, and that's what they've been saying for the last 10 years, and they haven't done anything, and and it's like I think a lot of it is that there's so much conflicting information out there about how to get started, and so which one are you going to follow? What's going to be your thing? And I really like how I went to Seattle a few months ago, and this gal had two sunchokes, and she just didn't know. Well, she decided to just stick them in the ground in her yard, and that was it. And there was grass and stuff there. She might have tried to pull out some of the grass, but for the most part, she just put the two sunchokes in the ground. And when I was there, apparently it was 2 years later, and I said, A, you can harvest as much as you want forever. It'll still produce more every year. In fact, the more you harvest, the more it'll produce. And B, I said, I think right now, 2 sunchokes, and now 2 years have passed. I think that this winter, if you harvest it this winter, I think you'll find that if you dig down as deep as you possibly can, you're going to get about 200 pounds of sunchokes out of this patch that is now taking over this corner of your yard. The reason why I'm so keen to mention this is because how long does it take to hold 2 sunchokes and walk out to your yard and stick them in the ground so that they're covered with dirt? You know, do you have to dig a hole, or can you just kind of like poke a stick in the ground, or what? And then you walk away and forget about it for 2 years. And so I don't know. I kind of feel like when people are stuck and they're struggling to go and get started, then I think it's because they look at those YouTube channels where it looks like before they can plant those sunchokes, they need to go and spend $5,000 in materials. And it's going to be a good 60 to 80 hours of work until they can plant those sunchokes. And I kind of feel like I want to advocate something far, far simpler. And so, and that is to just take these 2 sunchokes and just stick them in the ground. I mean, we're talking about what? 2 minutes. And then forget about it. Walk away. And come back, I don't know, a couple years later maybe. That's what she did. But you could come back the next year. There'll be plenty the next year. There'll be, like tens of pounds. But in 2 years, there's like hundreds of pounds. So, all right, Andreas, what you're leaning to is to say, because it's like I kind of feel like we're trying out a recipe for building community. I hope that we'll get a whole lot of people coming here to our Gardening Gardeners program, also known as the Permaculture Boot Camp, and that we'll end up with 20 permanent residents. And granted, some of those people will spend only 6 months being in the boot camp before they become a permanent resident. But I openly offer different things for free to people to become a permanent resident. And so, like, for example, if you spend 4 years in a leadership role here, I'll give you Allerton Abbey. And I kind of like the idea that other homesteads will eventually offer a Gardening Gardeners program, and they'll say, okay, we're gonna grow gardens, and we're gonna build natural buildings, and we're gonna do all of the homesteading things, and then by the time somebody's put 4 years into a leadership role on their property, there will be this beautiful home with an acre and gardens and everything. Kind of like how our Allerton Abbey is. All right. You're talking about people that are living in the city, but they have a patch of ground. They've been talking about starting a garden for years, but they haven't. And so what you were trying to allude to is if they were to come out here to the boot camp for a week, maybe 2 weeks, especially during the gardening season, then they'll develop habits so that when they go home, they'll do it. And of course, what I hope for is that they'll go home and, wrap up their life in the city and want to come out and live here with us. And so, but even more than that, I'm hopeful that there'll be 100,000 different homesteads doing Gardening Gardeners programs and they can pick whichever one is a great fit for them. I think that this is what you were alluding to, because I kind of feel like it's true. People are in this state of they want to, but they just, in the end, they don't. And I think that, I can talk about what the impediments are that they're having, but I like where you're going, which is to say, come out here and be part of what we're doing. And I also read something from somebody on Permies like, I don't want to go to the boot camp because gardening doesn't have to be that hard. And I kind of feel like I feel like our boot camp is incredibly easy. However, I love the name boot camp because we've had some people come before we called it the boot camp, and they thought they were coming to a resort and that all these other people would bring them lemonade while they sit in a lovely chair and watch the clouds pass. And at least if we call it the boot camp, we've solved that problem. I guess we've introduced another problem in that we make it sound like you're going to be really sweaty every day. It's going to be like going to the gym for 8 hours a day. And it's like, I promise you, it's nothing like that. And I think I've recorded podcasts with Steven in the past where we've talked about that. And it's like, I think it's an easy coast. And that when a boot's been here for about 3 months, they get about, I don't know, 6 times more done in a day. Not because they're now going hop, 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 but it's because the pace that they did when they arrived would be boring after you've been here several months, and they want to get more done and they do more. But it's still not like, I mean, for most people, there are a few people who come here and they want to turn it into an athletic thing, but that's pretty unusual. I think most people go at a nice, easy pace every day. All right. Andreas, you presented a concept. I gave you a long-winded answer, but of course, I mean, you probably have an answer to this as well. This is your dealio.
Yes, I think that once you experience doing the things, they become way easier than you expect them to be. That's another like big point, and another thing that I think would get people into making the leap is just like, it's not that hard once you do it. Also, for example, a lot of people go to the gym, which is a very foreign concept to me. And I think those people are creating a standard of athletic beauty, but it's not functional. And when you garden and when you take care of your homestead, you gain like a healthy body, and it doesn't have to be like super gymmy. And that's also like a huge plus because I thought of that as you were talking. Um, but yes, I wanted to dive deeper into the gardener's concept and how, well, from your perspective, it can be made something that everybody is doing, not only at Within Labs, but how other people like me can replicate this strategy that you use.
I like the idea that that you could offer a gardeners program at your place. I mean, you've got several people living there right now, but they're all family, which is the thing we're going to touch on today. The difference between collective living in Colombia versus collective living in the United States. But I would imagine that if you're going to offer a gardeners program, that it would be 40 hours a week of people growing their own food and building their own homes. And when they arrive, they will derive benefit from the gardeners that have been on the property before, that have built some bunks and have built some infrastructure and have grown some gardens. And then they'll eat that food and they'll stay in that bunk while they continue to improve under your direction. It's like, okay, today we're going to go out and we're going to do these 3 things. And so for 40 hours a week, the people that are guests on your land will, be part of what's being done for gardening and natural building and homesteading and things. 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, using the models that we've developed here. And then there'll be more bunks and there'll be more food growing there, and everything will be more reliable and more solid, and you'll derive benefit because if something goes wonky somewhere, then your gardeners, your collection of gardeners, will leap in and resolve any kind of homesteading issue that came up as a group. And so it's a bit like when you go out to work on something, then you have an extra motivation. I mean, you're not going to sleep in until 11 o'clock in the morning. At 8 a.m., you start, and all these people are depending on you. So you're not sleeping in. They're not sleeping in. You guys have all agreed to do this thing. And so you're all up there and doing it at 8 a.m. and things are getting done. And whenever you lean in to do something, then it's like you have 20 hands instead of 2. And so it's like, okay, let's all, pick up this material and put it into a bucket and we're going to move it over there. And it's like, wow, that was like so easy. And it's like, so you're going to have benefit, but they're going to have benefit too, which is going to be that now they're eating that food off of the land instead of people who wish to eat food off of the land, but they continue to buy it from the grocery store. And so, and now they're sleeping in a bunk that was made by other gardeners in the before times, but then they helped to build a bunk that's even better than any of the bunks that already exist. But part of how they learned to build a better bunk was because they could see the other bunks that were built. And they'd be like, we should make it a little bit better. Let's do this and this and this. And so let's set aside an acre, and we're going to build a humble home and a large garden in that acre for somebody to someday live. And then when 10 years have passed, you might have 8 humble setups like that. And you might have 4 people that are currently enjoying those. And they're outside of the Gardening Gardeners program now. They are more like a long-term resident. They did their time in the Gardening Gardeners program. And now they're deriving the benefits of all of their work, all of their time that they put into it. So I think that, when it comes to farming, we mentioned farming earlier, a couple of important things from farming. Wow, petroleum is predictable and reliable, so much more so than human beings. And so decisions are oftentimes made to get more equipment and fewer human beings because it makes financial sense. And then, of course, because you're using tractors and petroleum-based equipment, you need all of your growy land to be flat. Whereas if the mission is that we're going to use human beings instead of petroleum, that comes with certain comedies. But also, it's like if everybody is signed up to be part of, this 40 hours a week of like, let's grow our food together, let's build, let's do our natural building together, let's do homesteading together, then suddenly all of the artifacts start to come out, and there's ways to do it that don't use petroleum, and it might get to be easier and easier and easier. And in the long run, it might be far superior to any farm. Okay. I babbled and talked a lot. I don't even remember what the talking point was. If I wandered off too far.
No, we're good. I want to ask two questions before we leave the gardening gardeners. One is to Samantha, and it's like, how, as an external person from Wheaton Labs who has witnessed the bootcamp in action, how do you see it? Like, what is it like to see these people experiencing permaculture like that?
It's really neat to me to come and see people who are like brand new, and they haven't really used tools. They probably haven't gardened. It might be cold, and they can come and be comfortable. And the folks who are there, like Stephen in particular, is so great at teaching people, like how to, like, the first time you use a nail gun and the first time you use the saw. And Fred too is just so patient. I mean, I was out using the chainsaw and I made it so the chain fell off the blade, and he was right there and put it back on for me, and didn't just put it back on for me, but showed me how to do it in a really, patient, nice way. And it's just really nice to have people there that know what they're doing so well that they can share it with you and be really patient. I haven't used a chainsaw very much, but I feel much more confident now. I mean, actually, after being out there a couple summers ago using those, they have Paul has electric chainsaws, which are really kind of cool. They just use a battery. Well, so I went out and bought myself one because I was so unscary to get to use a chainsaw and feel like I could just use a chainsaw. It's not that hard. I'm not scared of it. And so that I kind of got that from being at Wheaton Labs. So I think that's really neat to watch other people come out and be brand new and then become completely proficient in doing stuff. There was a young woman a few years ago who was out there, and she'd never built anything out of wood, never really used tools. And after just a couple of weeks, she's making boxes and making stuff and made a chair and just making stuff. It's like it's a freedom that you get when you learn a skill. And so what they're doing in the boot camp is learning skills every day. And before you know it, somebody's completely proficient at doing all these things: growing food, preserving food, canning, building stuff. And a lot of them have ended up traveling afterwards because their family and friends need them to come over and build me a shed, start my garden, help me with my thing, because all of a sudden this person is so skilled. And I just think that's really neat.
Awesome. And that leads to the next question, and this is to Paul. If someone watching this wants to get into the bootcamp, what do they need to do right now? And when can they go? When is it open for the next?
Okay. So you've got a link up there, the permies.com/bootcamp. I'm not quite sure where that goes, but there's a website at wheatonlabs.com. But I mean, we've got, wherever that goes, it'll get you close enough. But okay, so how it works? People send in $100, and that's $100 per person. And so sometimes it's a couple that wants to come out, and that's $200. But all right, that's our application processing fee, because it turns out there has to be a lot of conversations to happen to get a person here. And then there's stories. But once you're here, it's free. It's a free program. But you pay the $100. We will send you a questionnaire. So there'll be a bunch of questions to answer. And that's like the first round. And then once you've got that, it says, now send an email to Paul to let him know that you finished the questionnaire. Then I get that email. Then I've got a canned message that I send that says, here are the next start dates. So pick a start date. So I think March 1 is the next start date. And so people will pick their start date, and then I'll reply and say, okay, about 10 days before you're set to arrive, somebody will contact you. It'll probably be Stephen, with more to work out more particulars. And so a lot of times people in that period of time are like, I'm going to drive. You know what? I changed my mind. I'm going to fly. But what? I changed my mind. I'm going to take the bus. I changed my mind. I'm going to drive. And it's like, so they go through that over and over and over and over again. And it's like, now we don't even touch that until like 10 days before your arrival date. And by then you've picked one. And so all good. And we'll get everything sorted out from there. Then people show up, and we, we'll either pick them up at the airport, or they arrive here between 3 and 4 in the afternoon on a Sunday. So March 1 must be a Sunday, because all of our start dates are a Sunday. And we make it clear, please do not arrive early, and please do not arrive late. So people show up, and we greet them. And usually Stephen kind of gives everybody a little bit of a turbo tour of like, there's willow feeder and there's another willow feeder. And you can look at like 4 or 5 different options. And then you pick where you're going to, sleep tonight. And then if you want to change your mind and sleep somewhere else tomorrow, we could probably work that out, stuff like that. Then a lot of times, sometimes Stephen says that he wants me to be there at 6:15 in the evening, and that he'll make popcorn, and then everybody gathers to kind of visit a little bit that evening. And then in the morning it's like, okay, most people get up at like 7 and strap on a feed bag, and here's the kitchen, have all the food you want. But we meet at 8, and we meet at 8 sharp. So like you might want to be there at like 7:59. And there you go. That's how it all begins. Did I answer the question? Like,
yes, you did.
How do you do it?
And Casey asks, sorry, Simone.
Isn't it March 1st is your next boot camp start?
March 1st is the next boot camp start. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Casey asks if families are welcomed.
So we have a program called the Thistle program. And that's where somebody, like a family, would rent a cabin and stay in the family. Stay in the cabin. The whole family would stay in the cabin. And it's like, then sometimes it's like there's a couple with a family and several kids. And it's like, if the kids are 12 or older, then as long as they are with a parental unit in the boot camp at the same time, then we're totally cool with that. And we've got, some rules about how we do that and things like that. But then if they are under the age of 12, then somebody needs to be watching them back at the cabin. And so sometimes we've had families with like 7 children, and then there'll be like a 16-year-old teenager that watches the kids back at the cabin that are under the age of 12. And then they rotate out. Sometimes the different kids will come out and be part of the boot camp. So yeah, big on families. Families are great. But if you're going to be in the boot camp, it requires an adult to be with kids, and it could be 1 or 2 or 3 kids. That's fine. In the boot camp at the same time. But any kids that are under the age of 12 need to have an adult, or I don't know, doesn't have to be an adult. It has to have somebody watching them that seems of a reasonable age, but back at the cabin. Is that clear enough?
And
it has taken us years to get to this point to answer this question clearly. For a while, we were allowing younger kids, and it it so like let's say somebody wants to bring their 10-year-old, and it's like, well, we're not allowing 10-year-olds to be in the boot camp at this time. Your 10-year-old needs to be thoroughly punished for the actions of the 10-year-olds that have come in the before times. So, okay, so here's Casey, but kids under 12 stuck in the cabin at all times. I think that like let's say mom is in the boot camp with one of the teeny boppers, and dad's back watching the kid that's 8. All right. I'm not saying that they have to stay in the cabin, but dad and the 8-year-old can do all kinds of things together. And so they don't have to stay in the cabin. There's all kinds of stuff they can go do. But I don't, having an 8-year-old in the boot camp, even with a parent, has proven to be problematic for the other people in the boot camp. And so we've drawn some lines. Now, we've now had lots of families come out, and they've respected this system. And I think it has worked out great. Like a 12-year-old or a 14-year-old or a 16-year-old will be in the boot camp with the parental unit. And I don't know, it seems like it worked out really good. And so, whereas in the before times, we tried younger than 12, and it did not work out really good. And so we drew a line. All right.
I think it's great for families with younger kids because there's so much to do at your property. I mean, it's a huge forested area, and it's safe, right? There's nobody there. It's just this 200 acres of private land, and you can walk the trails. There's a pond you can play in. I mean, you can just little kids, you don't have to do much with them. Just take them out in nature and have some fun, and they'll be good all day long. There's gardens. A lot of the cabins have gardens all around them, so you can go out and garden or pick the food. There's so much to be done that is super fun with kids. I mean, I took my kid there a lot when he was little, and he just had a blast. He doesn't care that he's not part of the boot camp. I mean, he probably didn't even know the boot camp was going. It's just fun to play with your kid in nature. And then when you get tired, you go back to your awesome cozy cabin and cook up some food that you pulled out of the garden. It's right there. Take a nap and then go play some more. I mean, it's an awesome place. I'd love to. It's like just as a family vacation spot. I think it's a blast.
So I hope that answers that question. What do you got? What's next, Andreas?
Yes. What's next is Gert, and I think that this is an important point to communicate, and is the kind of mindset that will reduce gumption lacking in the future. So if you are a Gert, I think gumption will remain in time, but you are a Ferd, you're doomed into depression.
I think that the big thing about Gert is that I think most permaculture professionals are advocating for something else. And so I advocate for Gertitude. So like what I want to accomplish here and what I want the Gardening Gardeners program to do is to end up with a village full of Gerts. So there'll be like 20 people who all have a humble home in a large garden, and they largely put their feet up. I mean, I imagine that if you do a whole bunch of this stuff, like you put your time in to the Gardening Gardeners program, to the point that you ended up with some acres and a humble home in a large garden, that I imagine that you're not going to do nothing all day, but you could And I would imagine that your days are going to start off with not kind of like what Samantha alluded to of like, winter is coming. Oh no, we got to hurry up and do things. But instead, to start your day every day with the phrase, "Oh hey, you know what would be cool?" And
Yeah.
that's where you're at, because you
I'd
got
like
your
to get to that
infrastructure,
point.
you got your garden, you got all more food than you could possibly eat, and a humble home that's rock solid, and your expenses are hovering around zero, and so you don't need to pursue money. And so I kind of feel like, and that's another thing with gumption too, is I kind of feel like for a lot of people that are living in the city, it's kind of like, I don't want to come up with gumption. I gave all my gumption to my worky job, and I'm now exhausted. And I'm going to go buy some pizza. I'm going to go with a friend and get donuts today. And later, it'll be Italian food, because, you know, I don't want to cook. I don't want to garden. I'm exhausted already, and that's why. So I kind of feel like Gert. I'm saying, you know, Gert doesn't have a problem with gumption, in large part because in order to get there, she went through the Gardening Gardeners program. She now has habits, gardening habits. And whether it's winter or summer or whatever it is, she's got things that she likes to do. But instead of that permanent sensation of being exhausted from your worky job, instead, I think that there's new adventures to be had. It's like, oh, I just thought of this cool idea. I'm going to make a cool thing because it's like the other cool things I've made in the past. And I'm going to optimize my infrastructure with this other cool thing. Or I'm going to add art or something like that. You know, it won't be, you know, terrific art. Like, I'm not going to win any awards with this art, but I'll think it's cool. Like
Yeah,
that.
I think when you start to add art, you know you've really made it. You know, like if you've made a thing a few times and then you're like, wow, I'm almost bored. I'm gonna put some art in this. And it's like a level of proficiency where like that's really neat because it's not just get it done and make the thing. Like when you're making clothes, right? Like the first couple times you're just learning how to knit or making a basket. You're just trying to get it done. But then you're like, I could put a pattern in this. I could do a little something. Takes a little extra time, but it's fun. So I think art is a cool thing. When art happens, you know you've made it.
I think a basket is a really good one. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
baskets are handy for a lot of things, but you can't make a basket that is of any value or any use until you first made a basket that didn't even survive the first 20 minutes after you made it.
Uh-huh.
You got to make that really awful, crappy, pointless basket in order to be able to make a basket that might last a month.
Yeah.
And then you can make a basket that might last a year. Then you can make a basket that might last 5 years, etc.
Mm-hmm.
But you got to do it,
Well,
and
and
you
you
got
get
to,
better at it. You get better at harvesting the materials and knowing what materials to look for. Get
yes.
better at the technique. Maybe you'll feel like learning a new technique. I mean, the more stuff like you learn and the more you get your hands on materials, the faster you get and the more possible it is to do more things. You know, somebody who's just getting started, it might seem really ridiculous to actually gather all the materials and make a basket or make a garment. But after you've done it a few times, it's pretty fast.
Awesome. I'm gonna move on to the next point, which is you've been without power for the last few days, right? And I've been told it's cold.
Yeah, it was. So for 2.5 days we had no power. So up on the lab, they have all kinds of power. It's all solar up there. But down here at base camp, we depend on the power company. And so it's kind of funny because so Stephen in the boots would take these battery packs that we have and load them up into the truck and go up to the lab and charge them with the solar systems up there and bring them down here for those of us that are on the grid and without power. So yeah, those big windstorms knocked out our power for 2.5 days. But we had heaps of heat. Heat was not a problem. Although it was looking like, because we've been doing an experiment here where it's like, how long can we go into the winter for this building burning nothing but cardboard and garbagey, like papery garbages or woody bits that are garbages or whatever. And so I think we're about to run out of that. But because the windstorm caused so much other damage, then Stephen and the Boots went out to do repairs. And I said, "Oh, don't worry about the garbagey stuff. I'll start burning cordwood if I need to." But we still haven't touched the cordwood. But cool. But the house, like, you know, we kept it plenty warm. It was easily in the 70s while the power was out. And Stephen kept mentioning, like, you know, there's probably some people around here that also have their power out, but they don't have a form of wood heat, or they do have a form of wood heat, but they burn a lot more wood than we do. So I don't know.
Yeah, but, having your power go out. What's that? I'm sorry, Andres.
Sorry, I'm bringing this point exactly because of Samantha's previous being terrified of the future motivation. And is it that if you really think about it, the alternatives are very insecure. And if you have any notion of being prepared, I think that's something that it's a really good motivator, is having the skills to not only survive, but being warm without gas or electricity. I think that's a really good motivator.
I think I know that Samantha has asked a bunch of times about building a rocket mass heater at her house. Did you have Uncle Mud come out to your house?
No, he did. He talked with me for quite a while and kind of gave me the prices. He's I live in Washington. What's that? I'm sorry.
He's booked.
Well, he is. No, he would do. Well, he might be booked now. He was willing to do it then. He said there's a bunch of ways you can do it. One thing is, if you want, you can actually set up a workshop. So when he comes, and then sell tickets. And so when he comes out, it costs a lot less because everybody's paid a little bit to be there. And so you're teaching people in your area to do this for themselves. And he says he loves to teach. So he's happy to just come out and bring a friend and do it at your house. But if you want, you can sell tickets. And then you've got even more people in your area that get to have this skill, which I think is really neat.
Right. I do kind of think that, because I think, you know, because you don't have wood heat at your house right now.
I am dependent on the power company. But I have kind of a fun thing. I have an off-grid cabin that's just a few miles up the road. So if we lose power, I can actually just go to my other house and have all the amenities you could ever want. So I'm kind of cheating that way. But yeah, for most people, you just need a generator.
I was kind of thinking that one of the things that you could do is if you were to make a fire outside and then heat up rocks, you could bring those hot rocks inside. You could also heat up water and do like hot water bottles that you bring inside the house. So it wouldn't heat your house up enough, but it would heat it up, warm it a little bit. Plus, there's the whole concept of like heat the person instead of the whole house. So then if you have water bottles, then you could, you know, each person has their little water bottle on them, and they'll probably feel quite warm, you know. Now, of course, there's I'd say one problem you have is you don't want your pipes to freeze.
Yeah,
But
that's a really big issue when you don't have power.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I did kind of a silly thing a couple of years ago because we were out of power for quite a while and the pipes were starting. We just have one little patch where the pipe is close to the wall. So I built a little pen and I put my my geese on the deck and I put my sheep right up against the wall and I just made them stand there and they created heat. So, you know, and they're fine. I mean, it was really stormy, so they were going to be in a barn anyway. But I just used the heat of the animals and insulated them, and they kept the pipes from freezing. So, and then we just have one room in the house that I keep warm because my dad's older, and I have a tortoise. And so, you know, some people have more needs than other people. And so we just have one room that's warm, and it works out.
Okay. Yeah. So, yes, the power went out, but I don't know, we rolled with it pretty good. I think we were plenty warm. And we did have a big battery unit, which when we got into day 2, we took the battery unit around to the refrigerators and the chest freezers and gave them a drink, so they can keep doing their thing. Yeah, I don't remember what else we might have done for power. But the little batteries that we could go charge up at the lab with the solar systems, that was a pretty good little system that we came up with. I mean, I think that the longest we've ever been without power before was like maybe 10 hours. So this was a new record for us. But I mean, we do so much off-grid stuff that for us it was, I think, really easy compared to other people. I think. I could be wrong.
And if for some reason it extended for a month, would you guys be okay?
Stephen told me that he was kind of like thinking like, let's act as if it's going to be a month. And so, yeah, we were getting to what I was doing was I was avoiding using my computer, which is kind of like the core of everything that I do all day. I was trying to get stuff done with my phone, which is really slow. But we got to the point where I could run my computer for an hour or two at a time on one of those batteries. And I was thinking, okay, I need to kind of shift some things around so my computer's not drinking because I had way too many windows open, and that consumes a lot of power on the laptop. And so we were moving in the direction of let's get used to doing it this way. So I don't know, maybe we would need to get our own. We do have a whole solar panel station on wheels that we didn't even fire up, but I imagine we could move it up next to the house and fire it up, and that would become our primary power outlet. We could have done that, but I don't know, we were lazier than that, which I think is like the theme today is like how to, and I think part of it is how to find a flavor of lazy that's cool. But I also kind of feel like, and I want to at some point talk about this. I'm not sure, you probably got it scheduled, but observations I've made of people who make a big leap and they want to do stuff and then they end up not doing stuff, and what happens then.
Yeah, I have this slide for it, so go on.
All right, wow, cool, you made a slide for this. This is nice.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's start with that one that story. So when I was on Mount Spokane, I had a neighbor who owned 2 homesteads. One that he lived on and the other one that he sold at least 3 times. And that, I know that probably doesn't make sense, but it goes like this. First of all, for a lot of people, they want to be homesteaders. They want to do the homestead thing, and they're living in the city. So they do what most people do, which is to buy a homestead. But they don't have enough money to buy it outright, but they do have enough money to make a down payment and then get a mortgage. Banks generally will not touch homesteads. So it's very common for a homestead to be owner financed. And the general dealio is 1/3 down, and then there's an interest rate that's like a little higher than your best mortgage interest rate, like usually 1 or 2% higher than that. And that's the norm. And so most people living in the country on a homestead, this is what they're doing. They put their 1/3 down and they are now paying this mortgage. The thing is that means they have to keep on doing their worky job. And a lot of times it's a couple, so they both have to keep doing their worky job. It's not always that way. Maybe one does the worky job and the other one stays home to do homesteading, but okay. Usually, I would say, from what I've learned, both of the people continue with their worky job. And so now they've gone from having like a 15 or 20-minute commute each way to having this hour-long commute each way. So their commute is now much bigger. And then any homesteading that they do is limited to the evenings and weekends. But they kind of come preloaded with the problems that were in the city. And that is that at the end of the day, they are exhausted. And they don't want to cook food or harvest food from the garden. They just want to buy a meal. And all right, this guy sold this homestead. And I know it's at least 3 times. And so each time what happens is he sells it with owner financing. So they pay 1/3 down, and then they start paying a mortgage. And if they stop paying the mortgage, then he repossesses the homestead. And so it sounds like what was happening is that people would put the 1/3 down, pay the mortgage, and then at some point in time, they would just walk away from the whole thing and go back to living in the city. So they just dropped the down payment and all the money that they put into it. And so, well, why? And it's like they got sick of it. They didn't really do all the things that they thought that they were going to do. And they were angry with themselves and possibly ashamed of themselves. And they're like, you know what? Just fuck it. I want out. I just want to go back to what we were doing before. I can't. I thought I was all about homesteading, but I hate it. I'm out. So, I don't know. Let's suppose that today you think about how much a homestead might cost today. 1/3 down. That's a lot of money. And then they just walked away from it. So basically, this guy ended up, he ended up with this big pile of money, and then he had the homestead again. And it sounds like some of them, it was like months later. Some of them, it was 2 years later. But he ended up with all the money and the homestead, which he then turned around and sold again. So I don't know. I've seen this quite a lot where people want to do homesteading and then in the end they decide it sucks. They want out. They want to not do this. And I don't know. I have talked to thousands of people about this. And I feel like, yeah. And what I want is if those people are going to do it, if they were, what I want is for them to come to a gardening gardeners program. And it's like, because instead of laying out hundreds of thousands of dollars and losing hundreds of thousands of dollars, then instead they part with like what, $200, and then they come and do this with us, and now they don't have to do a worky job. They've got hundreds of thousands of dollars in the bank. They can drop their worky jobs. They can come and do homesteading and permaculture 40 hours a week, which a lot of homesteaders that are doing the thing with the down payment and all, they're putting in 100-hour weeks to try to pull it all off. And it's like, you come to the boot camp, it's 40 hours a week with zero commute. And so now you get all the experience you want. And it's like, you can come and be part of the boot camp for a week, a few weeks, a month, few months, or longer, years. And it's possible to become a full-time resident. In fact, if you've got hundreds of thousands of dollars in the bank, maybe the thing that you want to do is to get your own acre. So like, you do have to put 6 months into the boot camp, but then you can get your own acre. And it's currently priced at $25,000 for an acre here at my place. But I kind of feel like, eventually there'll be other gardening gardeners programs that'll do this also. I like the idea that we've got some spaces that have some humble cabins on them already. So maybe that could be arranged. But that's a lot cheaper than laying out hundreds of thousands of dollars and then deciding it's not for you. And the other thing is that you're on your own when you get yourself a homestead, and you think you'll have all the gumption. You basically sell yourself into slavery to your dreams. And it's like, and then it's like, okay, so now you're a slave. You wake up in the morning and you're a slave to your dreams. Do you start at 5 a.m. or maybe 7 a.m.? Like, every day, do you start at 7 a.m. or is it 8 a.m.? Or do you start every day at 11 a.m.? And I've been to a lot of places where they don't get out of bed until 11 a.m. They start at 2 p.m. They quit at about 3:30 p.m. And then they party every night, and they take the weekends off, and they utter the words that they're putting 40 hours a week into this. But an hour and a half a day for 5 days a week does not add up to 40. But they are certain that they're putting 40 hours a week in. And why isn't there more stuff getting done? And then when they work that hour and a half a day, 5 days a week, they kind of, because it's like they're not feeling it. So this is where I think that gardening gardeners really gets you going, helps you to develop really good habits, and also sets you up with the understanding that you need in order to be able to do it in a way that will be easier, and it'll have more return on the effort and the dollars that you put in. The key is, this guy sold that at least 3 times, and that's because the people who came, they didn't do what they thought they were going to do. They thought that they would do a certain thing, and in the end they didn't. And it's like, there's all kinds of different reasons why they didn't. And I'm sure everybody who's watching this or listening to this can think of a dozen different bits that would prevent normal, good person from doing the homesteading things that they wanted to go and do. All right, along these lines, 10 years ago, we did this ant village experiment here. We had, I think it was like $800 a year to rent an acre of raw land. And for the first year, the people that came, I think they suffered from this. So they've got their land, and they could build a humble home and a large garden and a fence around that garden. And for the first year, I think almost everybody that was up there, they either did very little or they did nothing. And it was a lot of like enthusiasm, but then they also wanted to visit, and they would procrastinate and things like that. They did not have good habits, and their ideas of gardening and their ideas of building, they thought that they had gumption, only to learn that they did not. And it was during the Ant Village experiment that we came up with the idea, that Fred and I came up with the idea of the boot camp. And the people up at Ant Village were like, they had unkind things to say about the idea of the boot camp. And it's like, I would never do that. And it's like, no, I understand that you would never do that. And it's like, at the same time, I kind of feel like if they did do that, I think that if they put 6 months into the boot camp and then they went to Ant Village, I think that they would have been able to do a great job. Although I still think that if they were to do something where, and I tried to arrange for this, but I think if it's something where it's like, why don't you put some time into the boot camp, and then maybe like once a week, the boot camp will come and help you with your projects on your plot. I thought that was a great way to go about it, because it's like, I think that for a lot of people, if they're exclusively on their own acre, I think for most people, they won't get a lot done. On the other hand, if they do it collectively, they get a lot done. I mean, individually and collectively. So like, I think a person who's part of a group doing stuff, that one person will do, I'm going to make up a number, will do 10 times more stuff than if they were just by themselves. I think I could be wrong about that, but that's based on my observations, and I'm old and I've seen a lot. So I don't know. I do think, Samantha is the exception to the rule. I mean, but she's wired in a way that's quite different. Plus, I think Samantha's done so much already that she's got habits, a lot of habits built up.
Well, one thing I would say is when I first bought my property, I did a lot of sitting around and laying around and wandering around. And I would be frustrated that I didn't get enough done that day and the day was over. But I just actually there's a song, I think it might be a Beatles song, or it's roam around the grounds until you feel at home. And it would just kind of keep going on in my head. And I just kind of felt like I had to land a little bit. Like I had a pretty, really stressful job and a pretty, I was just barely done being a teenager. And so I kind of needed time to sort of land on my property and just lay on the dirt and go for walks in the forest and pick flowers. And after I did that, then I was ready to start, doing. And, luckily I got enough done before winter that we had a place to stay. But I totally understand the not doing, the having the ideas and having it run around your head and sit around and drink coffee and think about all the things we're going to do. Mrs. Robinson, yes, let me just put it in the chat. So I get that. And I think that what you're doing at the boot camp does really help people with that, because you do have, you have the weekend and you can kind of lounge around. And on Sunday we start early with the blitz. We don't start that early. We start at 9 and it's only for a couple hours. So you have your time off. You have all afternoon after 5. You're free to do whatever. But we do start at 8. And I think that that's important. I think that it's important for the group because everybody sees that everybody else had to also get up and get going. And it just kind of gets those habits, because it's easier to get work done in the morning and you kind of want to chill out at night. So I think that structure that you're giving people is really valuable. Remember a few years ago, you did a thing where I think it was like $800 and you could come out and do the Ant Village Challenge. And start in the spring and build a house by winter. I thought that was the coolest thing in the world. And then when I talked to you about it, you said nobody built a house. It's like, how is that possible? You have all year and it's a challenge. But if it's your first thing you've ever built, then yeah, that's hard. You got to build kind of a crappy shed, just like you build a crappy basket. And then you build a kind of better shed and stay in that way. You build something even cooler. But you need the experience. And when you guys do the boot camp, your people get that experience. I mean, they're going to build a junk pole fence because you need one for the garden, and you're going to build a drag around shed because you need it for something, and they learn how to use all the tools. And so in their off time, they can just run out there, use the tools, and start building. So
I have a thing I want to run by you, Samantha, and it goes like this, like the difference between a homestead and a farm. When you have animals on a homestead versus animals on a farm, when you have animals on a homestead, all of the animals have names. And when you have a farm, none of the animals, or most of the animals, do not have names. And so that is a way to try to define the difference between a homestead and a farm, which I think there's a lot. I think it's an important distinction.
Yeah. I mean, you need to, just in order to work with them, you need to be able to distinguish them. Like I don't really have anybody that I need to explain things to, but I still have for myself. I still explain it to my family, and I still say, well, we're going to do this with this and that sheep, and this sheep got out. So and they all do have names mostly. But that's really a distinguishing factor, I think that a lot of people do the ear tag where they just put the number on the sheep and they refer to the animal by the number.
Yeah.
That's reasonable. I don't do that. But yeah, you gotta, I think for me, just in my own mind, when I'm going through all the, all the ewes, who's had a baby, you need some label for the animal. Maybe that's different when you have 10,000 animals. I would guess it's different, but I don't have that many animals, and I can't even imagine, I've thought about it in the beginning, how do you have enough animals that you can actually make money at it? And I'm not capable of having that many animals.
I think that if you have a dozen chickens, every chicken has a name.
None of my chickens are named.
Oh, okay.
Some of them are distinguished, right? I shouldn't have a name, but there's a couple that are more troublesome than others, but otherwise they're just the chickens.
Okay. All right. I know we have a bunch of cats here, and they all have a name, and and I don't know. Do you remember Batman? We had a cat named Batman. And somehow the coloration on Batman's face, it looked like Batman was wearing a mask, and Batman's mouth stuck out of the mask. And so it looked like Batman's outfit, Batman's mask.
Yeah.
And Batman always looked broody and angry. and it's and everybody called this cat Batman. It was pretty clear which cat you're talking about when you say Batman. And then one day, I'm in my office and I hear this teeny tiny mewing sound, and we don't have any kittens at the moment. And so it's like, that is bizarre. So I go outside, and there's Batman looking at this little blob of spit that's mewing. And there's a slime trail between Batman and the blob of spit. And it's like, and Batman's like, the fuck just happened? I think that thing came out of me. What? Is this some sort of parasite? And so Batman's looking pissed off at the blob of spit, because Batman always looks pissed off. And it's like, oh, hey, Batman, I think you're a mom.
So cool.
And so I picked up the blob of spit and Batman and put them into one of the cat houses. And then Batman proceeded to put out 3 more kittens.
Awesome.
And Batman turned out to be a really great mom.
That's so cool. I love that the first time you hear a new voice, it's like, wow, that's a new voice. I never heard that before.
Yeah.
It's so cool.
It's always fun. Okay. So the Ant Village project. We still have Ant Village.
People and it's neat up there. I want to live
still
there.
Come and rent an acre by the year. And I'm thinking that maybe we need to lower the price a bit or something like that. But at the same time, the cost of rent and buying property is pretty much doubled or tripled in the last few years. So maybe the prices are quite low as is. However, we do have a new requirement. You're not allowed to rent until you've spent 6 months in the boot camp. And this was Steven's idea. And it took me a couple of weeks to come around to it, but I think it is a good idea. And but basically, if a person wants to rent an acre and they've already put 6 months in the boot camp, now they know what they're doing. And on top of that, they've developed good habits. But I think it would be wiser to not rent, not do the Ant Village thing, and instead continue in the boot camp until you can be gifted, basically Allerton Abbey, a humble home with a large garden. How much is a year for rent? Currently, if I remember correctly, it's $1,600 a year right now, and there's a $1,500 deposit. And so I don't know. I think that for annual rent, I think that that's pretty cheap. So Casey, you asked the question, how much? Does that seem really cheap to you? With all your neighbors are permies, and on top of that, not only do you get your acre, but if you're going to graze animals or something, you're welcome to graze your animals over the entire 200 acres. So I don't know. Does that seem pretty damn cheap? I'm looking at the chatty chat and I'm not seeing a response. So
Might be typing.
Oh yeah, typing a long thing.
Doing the boot camp first, I think, makes a ton of sense. Partly as an Ant Village, I mean, you're letting people use your tools and use your shop, and I believe they can even pay money to use your excavator sometimes.
Well,
maybe
right.
not.
We've come up with a system where if people help out with certain things, then they can, have the shop or the excavator or something like that. So Casey says that's cheap. Yeah, I think it's really, really cheap.
Also, that year that you if you're going to spend that money for a year and you spent 6 months in the boot camp, you're going to be far more productive over that year than if you just start from living in the city and then just give it a try on your own. You're going to do a lot more and get a lot more done, and your time will be worth more because you've invested the time in the beginning.
So Yeah, and I think Deep Roots is 25,000, and yeah, and it's kind of a. There's also with the Deep Roots, it's like if you were to leave after 3 years, I think most of that gets returned to you. Um, so, you guys keep going. I need a quick bow break, but I'll be right back.
This
And when I
is
get
so
back, you'll let me
fun.
know what we're talking about next.
This is so fun, Andreas. Thanks for doing this.
Awesome. Thanks for being here.
When I saw you were going to do this, I was like, I want to be part of that one because I love it.
Awesome. Well, I think we can talk a little bit about, because I have no frame of reference besides television.
Yeah.
Uh, how is family in the US?
How is what? How
Paul,
is family?
how does a family and individualism works in the USA? 'Cause that's a point that
Well,
Paul wants to bring up.
one thing that just happened for me over the past couple years is I realized I had grown my own help. So my kid, when he started to be, 11, 12, 13, he's so helpful. Like he can carry a pallet, he can buck hay, he can grab the other end of a board and we can walk around with it. I mean, he's a man, right? So like he can do stuff. And for so long with a little kid, you're investing in them, right? Like, okay, we're going to carry this bucket of water 20 feet to the sheep. Well, it's going to get, most of it's going to get spilled. It'll take about 20 times longer than it would take if you just did it yourself. But you invest in your kid and they love it. And then eventually, like I can just tell him, now, can you go do chores? And he just goes. He knows everything. And he doesn't have to do it all the time, but if I'm busy, he can just run out there. And if something goes on, he can run out and take care of it. So to me, that's really, really cool. Just to have, because I mean, it's my responsibility, but they're kind of his animals too, And then when he really wanted, like, he loves rabbits. And so he really wanted to get into rabbits. And so we did it. We got into rabbits because it was what he wanted. He wanted to kind of take responsibility for a thing. So I think that's really neat. If if you have kids, and I'm sure some kids are less into playing outdoors than other kids, but there's tons of indoor fun things for homesteading kids to do, and the garden, and there's so much fun stuff when you have kids around. I think kids just make life more fun. Nobody's
But
going to sleep till noon if they have kids, right? It's like
yeah,
nobody's going to let you stay in bed. So somebody in your house is so excited for life that you're going to have to get up and be excited too. I think that's really neat.
gotcha. But I do think that there's an expectation, at least culturally, that when you at your 18th birthday, you're out of the house and you're independent, right? That's like something
I think
common
it's
over there.
our job as a parent to raise a child who is ready to be completely independent before 18, I think, because then you got your training wheels for a little while you're still home. I think that that's our responsibility as a parent. I think it's also maybe our dream that our kids stay, right? But you got to be aware that you only get those 18 years if you're lucky, and by then it's like mommy's not going to be that cool anymore, and friends and the world is going to be so much more interesting, and so you might only get these first 18 years before they're on their own, so you got to make the most of it. But yeah, I mean, I certainly have the dream that he sticks around, but that's his thing. You don't know what he's going to want to do when he gets that old.
I think where Andreas is going with this is about how it's different in most countries other than the United States.
Yeah, how is it? How is it in Colombia?
Well, in Colombia, families stay together. Usually, there's well, it differs from family to family, but family businesses are a thing. Like
Uh-huh.
those things are inherited, and people work together. Maybe because of survival need,
Mm-hmm.
because people don't, for example, getting a loan to go to get higher education is not as easy. It's not as easy here. Um, so they stay united pretty much for the rest of their lives.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and for example, if there's a house, and I see this very commonly even in the cities, they start stacking uh, apartments on top of each other.
Neat.
So it's the building ends up being a collection of sons and daughters, and then
That's
the grandparents
cool.
at the first floor. But yes, it's a very warm setup, and everybody tries to collaborate. Of course, it doesn't happen everywhere, but it's culturally that's what happens.
Uh-huh.
Um, yeah,
That's really
that's how
cool.
family works here.
Well, where I live, a lot of people are that way. They have, many generations living together, and you get to see a thing which I didn't really grow up with. You get to see generational wealth. You see the farm being passed down, and it would not be possible for a young couple to buy thousands and thousands of acres and run cows or farm or do things at that scale. But because it's been in their family for many generations, it is possible. And people can, some folks decide to move to the city, but a lot of folks go and find a partner and then come home. And, and for the grandparents, that's really wonderful because they know that the farm stays in the family and that their kids are growing up and they will be able to pass that on. But the generational wealth to me is so powerful because I know a lot of people don't have that. And just the owning of property, your family owning property is a powerful, powerful thing. And so I think it's really neat that you guys do that in Colombia too.
Yes,
I think here in the United States, there's a lot of pressure to be an individual. I think that there is a lot of people getting to be 16, maybe 15 or 16 years old, and they have come to the absolute conclusion that all adults are dumb fucks, and only themselves are brilliant and all knowing, and this is like, not only is it common, but we've gotten used to it and kind of expect it. Then comes the whole thing of like kids saying, I can't wait until I'm 18 and done with high school. I can blow this popsicle stand. And so they've got this ferocious individualism that's worked into them. So there's an expectation that they will live away from their family on their own. And so this individualism is going to be activated. This is, I believe, the norm. I mean, there are exceptions. There are people who turn 18 and they stay with their folks because why not? They get along with their folks. It's free food, free internet. Why not stay home and yeah, start your life and do this and that and the other thing. Or it could be a farm situation, and they're going to continue to help out on the farm or whatever. But here in the United States, and let the people in the chatty chat let me know if I'm saying the right thing or the wrong thing or whatever. But I think that the norm is that most people will leave home. And in fact, I think that for a lot of people, the mindset is that if you're living with your folks post high school, nobody will want to date you. Like that whole thing is like it's not cool. It's not smooth. That's not all right. And so the only way that so basically, if you're still living with your folks, you're a loser. And so I think for a lot of people, this is a powerful incentive to go and do their. And then at the same time, I think for a lot of people, your kids come out different from each other, but also different from mom and dad.
Yeah.
And that's it's the way that this fierce individualism is fostered in the United States there's a lot of this mentality of like, I command you to be obedient to me. So there's parental units pointing down to their children, I command you. And then there's children pointing up at the parents, I command you. You have to vote this way. How can you support that kind of dumb fuckery? And this is going between everybody inside this family.
Yeah, I can see how you'd want to get out of that. But I think that some families, people want to escape, and other families, it worked out for whatever reason, and they want to be together.
Yes. Yes. There's a lot of families where they want to stay together, and they are kind, or more kind than hostile, at least.
Yeah, it probably comes and goes.
The hostility is encouraged. In fact, I think most people in the United States are taught that hostility is rewarded. The more hostile you can be, the greater the rewards. And so and then so many people are accepting of people that are hostile. Oh, that's just the way that they are. They're just like that. And so that person's going to get more candy than this person that's kind. Mm-hmm. And it's like I observe this. I see this. And maybe hopefully I'm not the only one that observes this. There's hostility all around. And so then our family units, especially with teenagers, gets to be a buffet of hostilities. There's been some comedians that kind of cover this. I remember one guy, he was talking about he was growing up in Canada, and he is of Indian descent, like from India. Uh-huh. And he was talking about how his family worked and how he goes to visit a friend, a white family, and how this friend was so cruel to his mother. And and the kid, this white kid, was kind of like, oh yeah, watch this, and blah blah blah. And then the comedian kid, the kid that's now telling the story of when he was a kid, he talks about going home and telling his dad something. And it's like, you can't, the dad threatened to beat him. And the comedian kid says, if you lay a finger on me, I'm going to call the Department of Family Services. And the dad hands him the phone and he says, you go ahead and call them, but it's going to be 8 minutes until they get here. That was the joke. So apparently the dad, so the kid didn't call the Department of Family Services because he didn't want whatever his dad was threatening. And it sounds like part of the comedian's thing was like the dad's shtick was all talk. I don't think there was anybody actually got beat ever. It was just, but it was, I don't know, that was kind of funny. The thing is that the difference in cultures, the hostility, the flippancy, the whatever, it's like normal. I think it's more normalized in most American households, which leads to, and so now it's kind of like, okay, gardeners. Like, let's say, somebody is like, I'm leaving home because my parents vote the wrong way and eat the wrong foods, and I want to go someplace where it's permaculture and gardening and homesteading all the time. And it's like, so they could turn to a list of thousands of gardeners programs and pick the one that is a fit for their stuff. And that would work for all of this, but it would have to be a collective thing, and hostility would be not cool. Like, because that hostility is poison to a community. So what I hear is that the families in Colombia have near zero hostility. I mean, there's going to be arguments. There's going to be discussions. There's going to be a difference of opinion about a lot of things, and people are going to be different. But compared to an American family, it'll be far more respectful.
we're passionate, so because we're in the
They,
tropics. And to be fair, we've had an internal conflict for 70 years, so it's not that fun. But internal families do tend to work like that, and I want to bring back that point. Is also because of necessity, I think, because and I learned this too last year. We had a massive fire here, and it was like a very to the face conclusion that we cannot be an oasis. Like if community wise we're not working, we're all doomed. And in the US, what I see is like this. It's almost like a trap because every kid has to start from scratch into the world.
Yeah.
And in our homesteads, like building infrastructure is very expensive. And I think that might be one of the things that sets back most people, and is the miscalculation of how expensive it is to even do fencing. Something as simple as that. Like if you have a big patch of land and you need to have kilometers of fencing, that's will take a lot of money, a lot of time, a lot of effort, and then that's it. You bought a plot of land and you spend it 2 years fixing the fence, and then you run out of money. But but if you are doing it in a community setting, then you share resources, you share the time into fixing the fence, or maybe even here, for example, there are far plots of land that 300 years ago built stone fences. So their great grandparents did solve the fences for them a long time ago. So that kind of community setup, I think, is the only way that can make homesteading feasible in the future, and and living in general. Because I've also seen some statistics that a lot of young Americans are going back to live with their parents. Like paying rent is not something they can even do. It's like, okay, I go live in a car or I go back to mom and dad. So I don't think this model is sustainable, and I think that out of necessity, we will be forced to be kinder to each other.
well, and I like the idea that, I mean, I recently read this book. I don't know if I shared this with anybody in podcast world, um, called Sun House. Oh man, it was. I did an audiobook and it went on for months for me. It was like 50 hours or something like that. It was like 5 times longer than your normal audiobook. It was huge, but um, they pointed out towards the end of the book, all of these people were coming together to form an intentional community. The author basically said intentional communities have been proven to not work. So they referred to what they were doing as something like a menagerie. And so, which I thought that was an interesting choice of poetry there. Um, and of course, it's fiction and it worked, but it was fiction. However, it's I like the idea that these people that have left their home, and it's like they've got, like you said, they've got no choice but to live in their car or to go home to mom and dad. And I kind of feel like, well, there's the boot camp. And it's like, I like the idea if we could do gardeners, and there can be thousands of them, then those people could seek out one of these to go to be part of it. And then it's like, I hope that all of the gardeners programs will offer something like what we do to say, if you put in 4 years in a leadership role, then you get a humble home and a large garden of your own. And you don't have to be in the gardeners program anymore. It's yours. You're part of our long-term community now. I like that for them, but at the same time, yeah, I think that And I also kind of think that if we have thousands of gardeners programs across the United States that people can go to and be part of, I kind of feel like you got to leave the hostility out. And we accept that outside of our gardeners program, hostility has giant rewards, and that's the smart play, to be hostile. And it's like, but inside the gardeners program, it doesn't work. And if you choose to exercise that, you'll be done here. And so you'll need to move on, and maybe you better be kinder to mom and dad then, or make the interior of your car really comfortable, because you're going to be there a while.
Yeah.
I think you do a lot of great stuff at your place, making it so people don't have disagreements. I mean, it's sort of like you're chunking up past the little whatever problems people might have, because you guys are focusing on bigger things. You're focusing on, like, let's learn permaculture, and what are we going to build today, and we're going to want to eat this winter. And the little petty problems folks might have amongst each other in the city really don't matter, right? I mean, unless we're like running for office, we don't have to run our mouth too much about politics. It's like you get to practice your religion in the privacy of your own world. So we don't need to, like, have problems. We don't need to convince each other. We can just enjoy the other sides of people, right? Like, because there's a lot more to somebody than what they believe, their religion, politics stuff, or their whatever other thing that people might disagree. There's so much more that we agree on, and we can move together to do a thing and create a thing. And I feel like at your place, that other stuff just kind of just left. It's not important.
I like to see it when people like after they've been here a week, and it's like they did 40 different, well, maybe not 40, maybe 20, 15 or 20 different things over the first week. And I think that there's a lot of people where they have a powerful sense of having built something, built a good thing. And granted, most of the people that are here have had a worky job, but then a lot of times your worky job isn't like you're going to go out and build a dozen different things. It's going to be like you do one thing and you do it over and over and over again. And that's it. So I don't know. There's been a lot of people here where I kind of get the sensation that they have a powerful sense of satisfaction from what they're doing. Not only because they're now eating the food that they grew, or that they're sleeping in the bunk that they built, or things like that, but just a sense of accomplish, of do, of create, and above that, as a group with others.
Yeah.
I mean, when you do a worky job, there's others there too. But I think, again, there's kind of at a worky job, it's more, there can be competition. There can be office politics. And there can be the hostility complete with the rewards that hostility brings. And I kind of feel like this is not that. This is different. And I don't know. I feel like the people that are here get a positive sense of accomplishment. So, but I also feel like, and that's kind of where this whole thing that we're talking about today started, where people are like, homesteading and gardening is for me, and then they make the leap and then they walk away from it.
Because it's hard.
And it's like gumption or whatever, and it's like, what happened to the gumption?
Yeah.
And it's like, I think, and so when we talked about doing this thing today, it seems like most of the people that were saying things, they were kind of like giving tips on how they get their own gumption or whatever. and I kind of felt like that's not where I want to go with all of this, or at least that's when Andreas proposed that we do this today. I kind of got the impression that that's not what Andreas had in mind. What Andreas had in mind is how do you get into a situation that's soul building and where you want to get up in the morning and do this stuff, as opposed to what most people do, which is sleep in a lot and procrastinate away from the things that they're there to do.
Yeah. I think you got to have a powerful why, like you hold your goals out in front of you.
And I think that the people that buy a homestead, I think that they have a powerful why. They've got all the reasons, like they feel it in their bones. This is what I want to do with the rest of my life, is I want to do homesteading. But then once they get there, it's all rather overwhelming, and they end up doing zero or near zero.
There is something that happens for me when I'm on my own place versus when I'm at your place. It's like if I stand out on my own property and I look around, nothing is going to happen unless I do it. Like every single thing I see out there is going to stay right where it is unless I go and do the thing. And at your place, things happen all the time. People come and do things I don't even know are happening. Somebody's done a thing, filled the wood box, or, the truck is gone. And then the truck comes back and it's full of stuff, and it's so much goes on that every time I come out to your place, more stuff has been done. And there was a time, it was quite a few years since I had visited you, and you'd built a classroom and a couch balcony and, all these things, but in all these gardens. It's like, I know that you personally spend a lot of your time at your desk, which means these things that are happening while you're funding them and you're driving them and you're imagining them, they are being done by other people's hands to some degree, maybe to a large degree. And to me, that was really powerful to see like what I had gotten done on my own farm in that same amount of time, which is still getting things done, but it's nothing like what you were able to accomplish because you created community. And I know there's challenges. I know it's hard sometimes, but the level of accomplishment is magnificent compared to level of accomplishment on one's own. So I know there's trade-offs, but like that's powerful to be able to see that.
Along those lines, I know that earlier there was a slide up there talking about how we went without power for 2.5 days. And there it is. And Stephen said something that I thought was really terrific. And I hadn't thought of it at all until he said something. He said, what I like about this is that when the power went out and it had been like a long, like a day or whatever, nobody here panicked. Nobody turned into a drama queen. And we've had some things happen here in the past where there was somebody who's like, we're all fucked now. This whole project is destroyed. Everybody run for it. And they were like, we have to leave. And we did. We had one event where I think that the well here at base camp died. And I think 2 people left because it was just too overwhelming. And they were kind of saying, we all have to go now. We all have to leave. This project has ended. You can't survive without water. And my response was, okay, first I need you to switch to decaf. Okay. It's like, if you take just 10 seconds to think about it, it's not like the people who showed up here, like there was a well here, like, that's been here for 1,000 years. No, if all else fails, we could drill another well. And it's like, so it's not like it ends everything instantly. And it's like, and then we ended up calling a guy who fixed the well. And it was like, I don't know, 4 days later, we're back online. Ta-da! But in the meantime, two people got so freaked out that they left. And it's like you get to freak out. That's why. But what Stephen was saying was nobody turned into a drama queen. Nobody freaked out. Everybody was like, "Oh yeah, well, this will be easy," and it was. It was, and in fact, I got, I think it was probably easier for us than most places. I mean, other places that have only wood heat or during the power outage had only wood heat, they had to haul in 10 times more wood. We didn't haul in any wood at all. I felt like there were higher priorities while the power was out to deal with. I just used the cardboard and the garbagey bits that were already inside the house. And but that's the funny thing is, like, whereas somebody else needs to pack in 200 pounds of wood to get you through a day, we pack in maybe 30 pounds of wood, and that'll be good for the next 4 days. And
Yeah,
so
that makes a huge difference.
it is weird how we've got a gal staying in the red cabin right now, and she's got a lot of experience running wood stoves, and she's like, this is amazing, the amount of work. So and then we've got that new cob hat in the red cabin, and she's talking about how it's still so warm in the morning, which people with wood stoves is like not super warm in the morning.
Yeah.
But we've been experiencing, like, for the red cabin with the new cob hat, like a 2-degree drop overnight is pretty common.
So cool.
Not an 18-degree drop or a 30-degree drop.
Oh yeah.
So, all right. I don't remember what we were talking about, and now I've taken us off to like a dozen different tangents. Andreas, where are we at now? What are we talking about now?
Okay, so having a powerful why is important, but also having a vision that makes it doable, I think it's very important. So I want to bring up the difference between a homestead and a permaculture homestead,
Oh, cool.
and ask you guys the power that having a permaculture design in your mind while executing little tasks has with your gumption levels.
I think it's a huge improvement because everything you do, so permaculture to me makes you're stacking functions, right? So when you do a thing, you might be really doing 10 things. And you're doing things for today, but you're also doing a thing that's for 10 years from now, right? So you might spend more time thinking about it and making your plan. But then when you do a thing, you're so much more productive. And the more you do, the more your stuff is set up so that it does get easier and easier. And some people might lay around and be relaxed now that they've made their world easier. But I think other people realize they can add a little more stuff. Now that we've made that part so easy, we can, stack more functions. But I think that making a permaculture homestead, to me, makes it possible to do all the things. I think if I didn't have things be working together, if I didn't have the systems that feed each other, it would not be possible to do as many things as I do in terms of like producing my own food and doing it in a timely manner that it doesn't take all day and it doesn't take all my energy. So I think permaculture makes it possible for me.
I think that, so I want to throw out what my definition of permaculture is. Permaculture is a more symbiotic relationship with nature, so I can be even lazier. And so with that said, so what's the difference between a permaculture homestead and a homestead? I would have to say that for most homesteads, like, they need their garden to be in perfect rows without any weeds, and they need they need to prove that they've made Mother Nature their personal bitch through this system of rows and things like that. Everything's very organized. I think that permaculture systems look pretty feral, and so I want to make it so that it'll all work without me. Whereas I think that a more conventional homestead is going to make systems that are very dependent on the homesteader. Like if the homesteader's not there every day, it all crashes. Whereas I want to make systems that are going to keep moving forward even if I walk away for several months. I think that that's going to be the big difference. Now, as far as a plan goes, I would have to say that conventional homesteads will oftentimes make maps too. I don't like the maps as much as making a list of all the things I want. And I kind of feel like as I prioritize this list and I start working from the top down, that what I want changes, and how I want things to behave or where they go or whatever will also change. Partly because I did a thing and I learned some stuff about my land, and partly because I did a bunch of things and I learned about a lot of things, and now I know more, and now I want something different. So I think a map is fine to kind of show ideas of the moment, but then I want to set the map on fire, because if you keep that map, anybody that you were showing what's in your head, you're like, look at my map. There's way too much marriage to the map. And it's like, we have to do it this way because it's on a map, and it's a very handsome map. Because the map is so handsome, we will not set it on fire. And so, I don't know. I kind of feel like, I mean, you guys, I know that Andreas has seen lots of pictures and video of this property, and Samantha has been out this property. I think what we've got going on is pretty good, but then, we never really made a map. I mean, we've done PDCs where people made maps of this property and they proposed ideas, and I think that was really good. There were some really good ideas. I do think that while we have a lot of beauties going on, I would like to get different kinds of beauties and more beauties. Like I like how the pavilion is now. That used to be the ugliest spot between all the properties. And now I think it's one of the most handsome because it's got that rock ground, that rock pavilion with the beautiful wood picnic table on it, which is like together they both look like forms of art. But I think we do need more spots in our gardens to be able to have people to gather and sit. I think that'd be good. But okay, all right. I want to create deep soil, good quality soil with a lot of organic matter. I want to have systems feeding systems. I want polyculture. I want things to appear feral. I also think a big one is to create systems that don't require any people to keep it going. And so that's going to be perennials or whatever. Another one I'm shooting for is for each of our food items to have a large harvest window, because I think when you require discipline of people, it's kind of like a poison on people. And so if there's a big harvest window and there's plenty of food, then it's kind of like, oh, I'll just go get some of that out of the garden then. And that's easy. As opposed to, I have to monitor this twice a day, every day to find out when is the time. Then I have to drop everything else in order to go and do the harvest because it's such a short window of harvest. Permaculture zones. I feel like permaculture. So Andreas has pulled up the slide for permaculture zones. I feel like permaculture zones is really, really great for vocabulary. Like to be able to talk about zone 1, zone 2. It's really good to talk about. Now, and one of the things that doesn't show up in the thing that you drew is that if you have an outbuilding, or if if you're going to go to work every day in a car and it's parked over there, then everything between your home and that car becomes zone 1 because you're walking between it a lot. Or if you don't do a car, but like here, we've got our wood shop is over there, and then it's like, and if you're going to go there 4 times a day, then everything between here and the wood shop is now zone 1. And so it doesn't show up on your graph. But the thing is to be able to just talk about what is zone 1 and what does it mean and why do we want more zone 1? How do we make a bigger zone 1? And then it's like, okay, can we transform that from a zone 4 to a zone 2? And because if we do that, then the foods get noticed more and things like that. All right.
I wanted to bring up the zones for the idea of comfort and laziness, and it is that I think that's also one of the biggest obstacles to reduce consumption, and is putting too much energy in different places, in different zones that will not benefit you directly soon enough. So people are used to a very high level of comfort, and nature doesn't care about you. In your case, it will freeze you to death, or in mine, it will dehydrate me to death. No problem. So I think that there's also a big aspect into bringing that comfort into the homestead and finding ways in which you are not in a survival mode, but investing your resources and your time and effort also into making it enjoyable. So reminding yourself that even though you want to make a pond in zone 4 that will collect a bunch of water, um, having a good quality of life will allow you to do that later, instead of having a poor quality of life now and having a huge pond that you never go to.
I think one of the things about having, like, if you've got, let's say you have 10 acres, I think one of the things that destroys gumption is the thought of all the things you want to do on your 10 acres. And here's a 40-page list of all the things I want to do on day 1 of arriving. And then I think a lot of people get to, like, if they get 2 years in, they're kind of like, wow, I haven't even done half the things on page 1 that I wanted to do on day 1. And it's like, I'm so disappointed in myself. But the other thing is that it's kind of like that whole thing of like, if you focus 90% of your love on a quarter of an acre, then I think you're going to get 10 times more done by the end of the summer than if you tried to distribute it out to your entire 10 acres. And that's where the zone system kind of comes in really good focus on zone 1 in the beginning. And you're going to have to completely ignore zones 3 and 4 for that first year. Because if you try, and too many people, they do this, they try to spread their attention out to the whole property that first year, and it just becomes overwhelmingly sad. So, for example, if you've got knapweed, you want to get rid of the knapweed, and if by the end of the first year you still have knapweed, that could be depressing and overwhelming, and it could really put out your gumption. But if you limit yourself to 1/4 of an acre, you can eliminate the knapweed and grow some pretty nice gardens. And by the end of the summer, you've got something to show for your time. So I don't know. I think 10 acres is a great homestead size, and at the same time, it can kill you if you let it. And so this whole concept of limit yourself to 1/4 of an acre for the first year, I think, is a beautiful solution.
Gotcha. No, totally agree. And I guess we can move to our next point, which is what kind of short-term goals do you think might keep someone motivated? Like, what are the little tasks that can bring gumption back?
What you have right there, that garden box, if you can sit down at the table and eat the food that you grew, that is a huge motivator, I think, at least for me, like knowing that, I'm going to have plenty of tomatoes. Like I'm never going to buy another tomato, right? Or I'm never going to have to buy any meat ever. And it's really so to me, like that's the day-to-day thing. Like a lot of us eat a couple, 3 times a day. And if that all comes from your own effort, I think that's a huge thing. I love going to the grocery store now because I don't need to buy anything. Like I walk around, I was like, I don't buy any of that stuff, or I don't buy any of that stuff. I'm just here for the ride. And it's really neat. So I think if you can do things like these things that are quick and easy, like, growing garlic doesn't take any work. You can have all your own garlic forever. Tomatoes are easy. Just find things that you can put on your table that make you feel good. I think that's a big deal. Sunchokes, yep. Sunchokes take 0 work. Walking onions takes 0 work.
Yeah.
Kale just grows itself.
There's a lot of people who are agreeing with your with the automatic backyard sunchoke theory who've already done it in
That's
the
a
chat.
great plant. And it's a great plant for people with livestock too. Like all that foliage, the sheep will eat that. You could compost it or use it for mulch, but my animals just eat all of that.
I saw something where David the Good said that he thought sunchokes were terrible, but he's down south where it's very warm.
Oh.
And so he never gets a hard frost. And so I think sunchokes need that hard frost. And so also we recorded that stuff with Stephen Brooks the other day, and he didn't like sunchokes. And it's like, yeah, well, you're in Costa Rica. So it's not going to get the hard frost. I think that the hard frost might be a really important part of sunchokes.
Yeah, I think living in the north where it's cold, you get thankful for stuff like that. Easy, sweet starch that you do nothing. I think if you live in the tropics like Andreas, you could the avocados just fall out of the sky and there's mangoes everywhere. You probably don't care about sunchokes.
Short-term goals that keep you motivated. I don't know. I just kind of think about like I think that the thing that works the best is to start the day with, hey, you know what would be cool? Or maybe start the week. I kind of feel like motivation to me is when I wake up in the morning and then I leap out of bed because I've got these cool things I'm doing and I want to do more. I want to move it along. I want to get to the next part. And it's like, won't it be cool if I can do the thing, blah, 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 you know? But I don't know if I would call those goals. And I want to go so far as to say, like, let me introduce an idea. And you're going to hate this, Andreas, because you made this beautiful slide saying short-term goals that keep you motivated. Goals. Let's talk about goals, because apparently in the book Holistic Management, it's suggested that if you don't have goals, how do you know you're getting anything done? And I kind of want to talk about the absolute opposite of that. And I want to say, is goals a kind of poison? So, like, here's my goal. Now, once you proclaim this goal, have you just sold your current self or your future self into slavery? Okay, future self, go do that thing. I'll wait here. You know, I kind of feel like goals kind of poison you. Whereas if you don't have any goals and you're just doing stuff because it seems cool at the moment, then you're doing stuff because, well, you're just doing stuff. And there's no goal involved. Therefore, there's no poison involved. You're doing stuff because it's like it just feels cool right now. So you're asking me about short-term goals that keep you motivated. I think having a list of stuff that would be cool sounds cool. And that's good. I love lists. I have lots of lists of all kinds of different things that sound cool. But I think the moment that I put goals on the list, that's going to reduce the amount of those things that get done. Does that make sense? Maybe I'm just crazy. And this is my crazy. This is my wackadoodle world that I live in. But I think that for a lot of people, it's very similar. And the moment you start talking about goals, I think most people shrivel up and hide from goals. Maybe?
Yeah.
I
No,
think
you're right.
you gotta find the way that works for you. I mean, I think that's a lot of learning and growing up, is figuring out what it is that will keep you motivated. What's your technique? Do you make a list and then reorganize your list as the day progresses, or the week, or the year? Or are you a goal person? I mean, learning yourself, I think, is a really important skill.
You know, one good thing about having a goal is that I think most people will procrastinate. And then if they do something cool while they're procrastinating, they got a cool thing done, but they feel like shit because they ignored their goal.
I totally do that.
So the procrastination is the good thing. So you might as well make a goal that you don't give a shit about in a way. But if it sounds like a great project and you set it up as a goal and you're going to try to brute force yourself into doing it, I don't know. It sounds crapulent to me.
Yeah, that's a really interesting way of putting it, because I have all kinds of things that I have done in procrastination time, and they're amazing, but I still feel bad about it. Like, I'm kind of ashamed that I have so many beautiful garments that I've created because none of them were on my list of what you need to do today.
You did that instead.
I did. I was like, how
Rather
many
than being
hours?
proud of these things that you've created, like, look at this. This is amazing. I did this.
But when I was doing that, there were things that were on the list that were not being accomplished.
Yeah.
So following one's passions, I think, has value, but we also have to have the discipline to do the things that need to be done.
Which kind of brings up a whole nother angle to a lot of motivation. A lot of people, I'm gonna say a thing that might be a cruel thing for me to say to other people. And it's basically something I've said before. And it's like a lot of people cannot accomplish anything at all unless they've got some psycho, nasty, angry manager person looking over their shoulder, telling them what a stupid fuck they are. So without that toxic relationship, they cannot do anything. And I think in a podcast a long time ago, I referred to this person as Mr. Slappy, which is basically a manager. You know, I told you an hour ago to have this ready now. So without the screamy, shouty, hostile stuff, then a person cannot function. They won't accomplish anything without a Mr. Slappy. And I kind of feel like the purpose of doing what we're doing right now is to talk about, okay, let's suppose you're one of those people and you need motivation, you need gumption, and you need to have it without Mr. Slappy. And it's like, okay, so how do you do that? And I think some of us, probably the three of us, are able to get stuff done every day. And we have different, and a lot of it is, and we don't really have a Mr. Slappy in our lives. I mean, we might have the whole idea of we fuck up, we might be really hungry, or we might be really cold, or
we might have to subsist out of the grocery store.
And we might not have the money to buy groceries if we fuck up.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, on the other hand, so really the people that probably want to benefit from this, these are probably people that need a Mr. Slappy in their life in order to be able, like, they need to go get a worky job with some sort of manager that's kind of going to be some flavor that's going to motivate them. And a lot of times the flavor that a person needs is not a kind flavor. Like, they need a kind flavor in order to be able to get anything done on any given day. Then at the end of the week, they have money and now they can go buy food. And so I think, again, Gardening Gardeners solves this without a Mr. Slappy. However, if you can't develop good habits and get things done, you'll find yourself not being part of the Gardening Gardeners program anymore. So, so you've got some motivation, as we're talking about, motivation and gumption and stuff. It's a form of motivation, but it has no Slappy involved. It's a slappy-less motivation. But if you're out on your own on a homestead and you're seeking motivation, there are things that we can talk about that can help. But one thing is I kind of feel like if you can get an automatic food pump going, then it took almost no work to get it going. It took very little work, and now it's going. And now you've got food coming out of your system. And then if you grow something else, that's a bonus. So that's an extra. And it's like, now it's delightful instead of being something that, like, oh boy, if that food doesn't come through, I'm going to be so fucked. But as long as you've got all this other food, growing, you got heaps of sunchokes and walking onions and kale and whatever else growing, I recently read that chickweed might be a good food
Oh yeah,
for the automatic backyard food pump. And it's like, oh yeah, you're right. I think it would. All right.
I
But
love chickweed. I'm so happy when it comes up. I have some growing right now. It makes me so happy every time I see it.
um, so I think that uh, being I think a lot of people need, I don't know, something that gets them to start doing stuff at in the morning as opposed to like early morning.
Mm-hmm.
And it's
Bait.
like, and really it's about habits. It's about building a whole bunch of habits. But I don't know, I kind of feel like all of the stuff that I do is not really from habit so much as it is, hey, you know what would be cool. And so I mean, I suppose I could talk about how to get stuff done in a corporate environment because I have some knowledge about that. But I don't know. I feel like I was oftentimes hired to be the motivation for others, to be a form of Mr. Slappy.
You are a very motivating force, for sure.
I don't know. It's different when you're in a professional environment and I can use the phrase, yeah, but you're being paid a professional wage, so it seems like you'd be able to do this, in a timely fashion. That would be the professional thing that goes with the professional wage. But when we're talking about people homesteading for themselves, that doesn't carry any weight.
Yeah. Yeah, you got to find the
Maybe,
way for fire to come from within.
and maybe there can be like two categories. One of like, if I don't do this, I die. Because there's some things that do require like a Mr. Slappy in the back of your brain saying like, "Hey, survive," kicking you a little bit.
No, I think what you're saying is true, and at the same time, completely false. I think
Okay.
for a lot of people, like, I got to do this or I'm going to die. I guess I'm going to die.
I think that would send a lot of people back to the city if they got it down to the level of like either you get your food in the ground or you're gonna die. Be like, I think I'm gonna pack up my car. I'm gonna head back to the Safeway.
I
That
I
was a
agree.
little much.
I agree. I would much rather see people pump out a lot of food and it's easy and delightful. And the whole concept of like, I got to do or else I'll die. Like that's, it's like I got, I, if I don't do this work, then this winter I won't have a lot of variety of fun things to eat. That's, I don't know. It's like, because then another way of phrasing it is, hey, you know what would be cool? What if I grew a bunch of tomatoes and peppers and I canned salsa? Salsa's great. That'd be cool. Now you're doing it from a position of, hey, you know it'd be cool, rather than you better fucking do this or you're going to die.
Or like, what do you want to eat? You know, like, what do you like to eat? Figure out how to grow that. Figure out a way to
No,
fill in the various food
but see,
groups that you like.
the key is that if you're going to be like, what do you like to eat? And it would be nice to have variety this winter instead of die. And the way that you get there is through the automatic backyard food pump. So if you've got, like, let's say you've got 8 things growing, so that when December rolls around, you can wander out to the garden and harvest enough of these 8 things to put together soup or to put together all kinds of fun things. You can, but the thing is that there's plenty of food out there. There's heaps of food. You're not going to die. Now, if it's like early summer and you're going to plant tomatoes and peppers to make salsa, you're doing it not because you have to, but because it would be cool. It'd be fun. And the worst thing that could possibly happen is that this upcoming winter, you won't have as much diversity in food. And that's it. You'll make the only reason you're doing it is because it'd be cool. I mean, you got enough food already. And so growing tomatoes and peppers to make salsa, that would be cool. That would just be a kick, right? You don't have to do it. You're doing it because it would be cool. See the difference?
Maybe, yeah. So maybe we can change short-term goals for achievable, fun activities that keep you motivated.
Or a list of hey, you know what would be cool? Here's a list of things I think would be cool, as opposed to goals. And so smart people like Alan Savory say goals are essential. And maybe there's some people where that's their mindset and they need that. That's how they function. I think that goals are poison. But I'm a different person. Is there anybody else who, I mean, maybe we got some people that are like Alan Savory people where it's like goals are awesome. And maybe there's people like me where goals are poison.
Well, there's a Space Girl. Sorry, I didn't know your name. She says that just today we had to dig out the door to the chicken's coop so we could collect eggs and feed the chickens. I did not want to go outside.
Oh, yeah. But I mean, the moment, and that's another big thing, the moment you're caring for animals, it kind of leads in this podcast that we've talked about making for about 8 months now. We haven't made yet. Like, if you have animals, you cannot travel. It's not entirely true, but there's a lot of truth to it. Similar sort of a thing. If you're going to take on the care of these chickens, then you now have a responsibility. And granted, that responsibility is poison. And I think with the Gardening Gardeners program, then if you're having a bad day and you can't go out for whatever reason, don't worry. The Gardening Gardeners are going to sort that out today. First thing. It'll all be taken care of. But yeah, if you're on a homestead all by yourself, no one else can do it. This is why you cannot travel, because something could happen and you got to be there. And those chickens are utterly dependent on you, unless you can design your system in such a way that they'll be fine with or without you. So if they are totally out in a paddock and there's a livestock guardian dog in there with them, you might be able to go a week or two. But then if you put them into a coop every night to protect them from predators and let them out in the morning, well, you now have that obligation, a responsibility. And obligations and responsibilities are poison.
I think this is a really important, I guess not a question, it's a comment, but it is. It's like if you're responsible for the lives of these animals, and not just keeping them alive, but keeping them, providing a good environment for them. And so I think it's important, at least for me, to look at the things that will make me want to go outside. Like, why don't I want to go out? Well, it's cold. So put on way too many clothes so that you just kind of can't stand it anymore in the house while you're putting on layers and you're so hot you got to go out.
And when you go out, it feels great.
Yeah, it's amazing. Like, it's always a beautiful day if you have the right outfit. There's not a day that sucks if you're wearing either enough or a few, the correct outfit. You're fine. Another thing I used to do, which is kind of naughty, but I would do this anyway, is I would just fill my pockets with cookies. And it's like, I don't want to go out and, shovel through whatever blizzard has come in and then heave myself out and break all the waters and do the hay and do all the work. But I have to, right? They're out there in the blizzard. They don't get to be in the house like me. So I just stuck my pockets with hot cookies and I'd go. And then you don't mind so much.
So I have this weird mentality down that road. And here I'm going to say it for the sake of Andreas. Andreas, have you ever read the book Dune or any of those Dune books?
One, and I've watched the movies. Yes.
Okay. All right.
I'm reading them all right now. I love them.
Okay. So basically, if you go out into the desert and you don't wear your still suit, you're going to have a bad day, right?
Yep.
Or if you don't wear it correctly. So it's a little bit of an IQ test. If you can go 3 days in the desert with just you and your still suit, it shows that you have an IQ that's this high, and that the people that didn't make it, their IQ wasn't that high. So you've learned something about yourself. I feel like it's the exact same thing with the cold. If you go outside and you have dressed for the weather, but in 20 minutes your feet are crazy cold, you didn't exactly pass that IQ test.
Right.
Or if your fingers are cold, or if you're cold and you're just then yeah, you didn't pass the IQ test. So I don't know. I kind of feel like if it's 30 below outside, which has never been 30 below here, but in Missoula decades ago, it did hit 30 below. In fact, it got to 100 below. I got my whole 100 below story to tell, but now it's probably not the time. The key is, if you go out and it's 20 below and you're out there for 2.5 hours because you got to do something, and you're comfortable, then it's like you just proved you have a high IQ. You passed this IQ test. You have, I would say, have you impressed yourself? No one else gives a shit.
No.
Have you impressed? If you go out, it's 20 below, and you go out for 2.5 hours to do things that need doing, and you're comfortable, I think you ought to have impressed yourself. So that's what I do, is when there's a thing outside that needs doing and it's 20 below outside, I put all my gear on, and if I've been out there a couple of hours and I'm still comfortable, I kind of feel like, yeah, right on. It turns out I'm not stupid after all. I don't know. It's a little validating. That's what gets me to go out when it's super cold.
Yeah, it's fun to have the right outfit. It is really neat to have your clothes.
Now, we had a summer where it got really hot. It went over 100 several times. And I feel like, and it was during our events, and I feel like the last PTJ we did where it got really, really hot, we aced it. So when the temperature hits 95, we start deploying slushies every hour on the hour. And then on top of that, we go and we do all this heat protocol. We call it the heat protocol. And we've got like a dozen things that we do when it gets to be that hot. And then everybody was comfortable. In fact, at the beginning of the day, people were hoping that it would get hot so they could get slushies. I don't know. I kind of feel like it was an IQ test that we passed. We pulled it off, and we did great.
Well, these are skills that, whether you're dealing with the hot or dealing with the cold, that make your permaculture life, your outdoor life possible. Like I suck when I'm cold. Like I can't get stuff done. I can't be motivated. But if I have enough clothes on, I'm all set. That's why I started making my own clothes, is because wearing store-bought clothes, I might have 10 layers and I'm still freezing. So I started creating my own stuff out of wool, making, dresses so you don't have that layer between when you tuck in your shirt and your pants. Guys don't get to have this luxury, but ladies get to wear a bit of a dress, and then you're so much warmer. And I learned when I was out, when I first got my property, it's, it's hot, a lot of sunshine, we didn't get to 100 degrees, but 80 degrees is pretty hot for me. And so I would just have long sleeve cotton and then my Carhartts, and I would just put them in a bucket of water and put them on and get back to work. And if you're dripping wet, you're not hot. You're perfectly comfortable, almost cold for a little while. Do your work. Eventually you might get hot and just do it again. Get yourself wet. I lived in Vegas that way. Every time I get warm, I just soak my clothing and totally fine. It wouldn't work for Andreas, I don't think. It doesn't work in a humid place. I don't know what humid people do, but hot and dry people can do that. I don't know.
Half
I think
of the
it's
year we're hot and dry, so it works for me.
Oh, you're hot and dry. Okay. All right. Well, I just think having these skills gives us more freedom. You know, if you have the skills to be able, I know how to manage my own body temperature in hot weather. I have the right outfit. I know how to manage my own body temperature in extreme cold and wind. Right? I have the outfit. I know the skills. Then you're not stuck in the house. You're not, a creature of the thermostat. There's you're free. You can go out, do it. It's a beautiful day.
All right, Andreas. There's a whole new slide now. Okay. Stopping to look at and admire the changes in the landscapes. Remember how it was. Oh. And so what are these pictures of? Is this your place?
Yeah, that's my place as a reference, but it doesn't even have to be the landscape. It can be the house. It can be your garden. It can be... I think sometimes we get stuck too much into the now and our goals, as we've discussed, and don't take the proper time to just sit back and observe that we've done something. And whenever I think we feel that way, that might be a good strategy to just like, hey, stop and look at what your foolishness has done.
I like the video that you made for us this year. I sent you the video that I took the moment I first saw Base Camp, and I was shopping for property, and so I took a little bit of video, and it showed how this property is one giant solid rock, and the dates for the before and after, it was like they were both early May, I think. I can't remember the exact dates, but the key is that before it was like rock, clearly a giant solid rock, and they had to dynamite a shelf out to put this house in. And the cheatgrass was suffering. It couldn't even get going. And everything, what weeds were growing were so sparse, you're basically still looking at the soil with hardly any weeds growing. Compared to now, where it's gardens. So we're growing these fabulous gardens on. There it is. There's the video. We're growing these fabulous gardens on rock, on solid rock. And so I keep encountering people that say like, "Oh, it's impossible to grow where I'm at because it's all sand and gravel." And I say, well, we're growing this on solid rock. So I don't know. Samantha, you've been here. You've seen I think it's kind of the whole solid rock thing is kind of cool because they had to like blast stuff off to expose this flat rock. And it's not paved. It's not like a paved road. It's a solid rock road, which is kind of cool. Like the driveway is solid rock.
Yeah, it's quite the place. I think it's super neat when you're walking up the driveway and you're on bedrock, right? Like, and it's kind of perfect, the bedrock. It's all smooth and lovely, and it's great on your bare feet. So it's almost like it's made for it. But then you also get into these layers, like you're showing in the video, where you have these like layers of, I guess it's sediment, sedimentary rock. And so it's beautiful. Like you kind of carve into it and it's almost like you make a rock wall by just exposing the rockery that's there. So that's really neat. And because you bought a place with so much rock, you get to do a lot of a lot of art with your rock. There's a lot of fun dry stacked walls at your place, and that moon gate that you made is all just rock from the land.
Yeah.
So to me, rock is a huge resource, and it's like some people might be like, "Oh, the land's so rocky," but you get to use all those rocks. I think
So
it's great.
Andreas did this whole, take a look at the before and after, and it's like, this is our before and after. And I wish we had taken more video, like in the fall this year, when all of everything was we had so much lushness. We had a couple of spots where things got so overly lush that it's like the food crops we wanted to grow weren't growing because all these other things just grew to be about like 4 to 5 feet thick. And it's like, because the soil in that spot is just so incredibly rich. But Andreas, you were saying before and after, and you were showing us pictures of your place with the before and after. And so look at all that greenery. Hot dog.
Actually, there's a fun story about that. Because I was in a meeting with the Department of Agroforestry at a national level, and they have this new program for tropical dry forests. And then they said that they stopped allocating funds to the reforestation of tropical dry forests because they had proven that it was impossible to desertify these kinds of areas. And I took out my phone and I showed them this picture. And yeah, are you sure about that? And then they came and they saw the stuff that we're doing here. Basically, it's a lot of swales in our case. And now they've changed the law so that those kinds of reforestation programs can happen. But I think the point is that being foolish enough to plant a tree like these trees that are behind me, I planted all of them. And yeah, it's like what Mollison used to say: will plants grow? Yeah, yeah, they do. And then stopping to see the work that you've done, I think, even if it's small, even if it's just a garden, just thinking about the fact that you are eating food that you grew, that's magic. And so a little contemplation and observation of that is very helpful, in my opinion.
You said like, that's eating the food that you grew is like magic. And kind of going back over all of this talk that we've been doing, I kind of feel like that the key is a lot of people put themselves in a place of desperation. Like, I got to farm to get the money to pay the mortgage, or I got to go to my worky job to get the money to pay the mortgage. I gotta. And they're a slave. They're a slave to their past decisions. And I'm trying to come up with a collection of techniques to go to transform from the gotta mindset to the hey, it would be cool mindset. I think that that's all the difference in the world. I'm not saying it's a recipe for happiness. I'm saying it's a recipe for getting the poison out of your system, and the gotta is a type of poison. And then when you make decisions from the perspective of desperation, instead of from the position of, hey, what would be cool, your decisions come out to be radically different. And I think permaculture is all about the latter. Like, hey, what would be cool? And it's like, can you leverage permaculture to be able to live your life from, hey, what would be cool, instead of, and I think traditional homesteading or farming is a position of desperation. You've put yourself into a desperate situation, and now you've got to unfuck your life or else. And it's like, geez, your decisions end up being pretty shitty from that angle. So it's like, what can we do to get you out of that and into, hey, you know, it would be cool.
No, I totally get it. And for example, my neighbors here and people in rural Colombia, they kill themselves growing food, then they sell it for very cheap, and then they go to the supermarket to buy bagged potato chips. So it's it's like, what are we doing?
So a big part of what we're doing here is I will buy we don't do potato chips, but I do buy infinite tortilla chips. And we're not going to make tortilla chips. But what I want to do is, rather than say you don't get tortilla chips anymore, no tortilla chips for you. Instead, what I want is to make it so that the food that we bring out of the garden is more appealing than the tortilla chips. And so part of that is that you know, like if we've got soup, like a sunchoke soup, that's sitting in a crock pot, then for a lot of people that's more appealing than the tortilla chips. Maybe not always, but if my thinking is that if anybody is still eating tortilla chips, we need to do better in providing food from the garden. And so what does that entail? But if I like the idea that someday we'll have this bag of tortilla chips where all the tortilla chips in it are stale because it was opened up 8 months ago and nobody's eaten any. Something like that. Like that's the direction to go in. That's what I'm shooting for. And we're growing more and more foods all the time, every year in the boot camp. And we're doing a lot of food preservation. So there's lots of stuff. There's lots of variety to be had, even now in the middle of winter. All right, Andreas, do you have, I'm kind of feeling like we ought to be winding up soon.
Yeah.
How are we doing?
We have 4 more slides.
Okay.
Is that okay? Or we can wrap up now. Let's see.
I'm feeling pretty spent. I'm ready to be done.
Okay.
If they're quick slides, okay.
Well, experiment and iterate is what we've been talking about. Having fun, like don't do just the stuff that makes you survive, but do fun stuff. Becoming capable in everything that you, so you can guide the help. Yeah, so become a little bit of a plumber, a little bit of a electrician, a little bit of all those things helps a lot to understand what they are doing. Frugality. I'm not sure if you guys have any concepts, comments on that.
Well, I think that the word frugality kind of suggests sacrifice. And I would prefer to travel a path where like gratitude to me is not about sacrifice. Gratitude is going to be abundance. Like I've got so much of everything. But you end up not needing money. That to me is gratitude, which I think is kind of the opposite of frugality. I think frugality is like, which tortilla chips are the cheapest? Or maybe forcing myself to sacrifice tortilla chips and buying ramen instead is better. You know, like cheaper. Like frugality has the word sacrifice woven into it.
So maybe being humble with your choices.
I like gratitude, like the pursuit of something where it's a life that is so glorious and yet free, you know, and it's like, but it's more glorious than anything you could buy.
I think for me, frugality isn't necessarily like giving up. It's that I would rather make it myself. Like rather than go to the store and buy a bunch of fencing, I'd rather find the things that I have and create something. Or rather than go buy a fancy restaurant meal, I'd really rather plan ahead and grow my own chickens and grow my own vegetables and make an amazing soup. You know, it's not so much that I couldn't afford it or I'm choosing the cheaper option, because a lot of times it's not cheaper to do it yourself, right? Especially if you count your time as being valuable. It's not necessarily cheaper, but I prefer my own things. I prefer to do it myself. I like the ingenuity that it takes to figure it out with the available materials. And somebody might look at that and be like, wow, that's really frugal. You just built that barn out of pallets. But I'd rather do that than go buy a load of 2x4s, right? It doesn't feel good to me to go buy brand new lumber. I haven't bought brand new lumber like ever. I mean, I get it off the cheap rack sometimes, but it's not because I can't afford it. I just don't like. I guess I don't like creating that market. I'd rather go take something like there's really old barn wood that I can score somewhere and use that. And it might look frugal, but it's more because I enjoy the craftsmanship of making my own stuff, seeing the length of the boards and seeing what can you create with that, rather than, you know, just the thing you make just looks like what everybody else made. So, and my clothes are a lot of times something I made myself. And you could say that that's frugal. It's not necessary. It wouldn't be cheaper. Like if I bought the wool, it would be some expensive stuff, but I actually have the sheep. So it is, you know, I still don't think it's cheap. It takes a lot of time, but I get to do my own thing. I can imagine it and I can create it. So to me, that's frugality, is like doing it yourself because you want to, not necessarily because it costs less money.
Well, I've done food as medicine for a couple of years, so I've been not going to restaurants much, if at all. I don't know, more like once a year rather than twice a week.
Yeah.
But I also kind of feel like when I do, it seems sleazier to me. So it's like not only the cost is like pretty much doubled for everything everywhere, but on top of that, there's just things that are normal now in so many restaurants that just strike me as really, really sleazy. And it's like, well, one way to not be caught up in all the sleaze is just don't go. And it's like
Yeah.
suddenly eating at home seems far more delightful because of those things.
Well, if you go out, everybody has to compete on price, and nobody's hardly competing on quality, right? Like they're in business. They have to put food on your plate that doesn't cost them very much so that they can keep the doors open. And for me at home, like the food, I only get to eat so much food every day. So I'd like it to be the absolute highest quality, have the most minerals in the soil where that food was grown. Make it so that that carrot just came out of the ground and I just ate it, instead of like food that came from who knows where and was grown in whatever condition based on what the market will bear, right? Like I can put more in. So I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, you didn't interrupt me. No, sorry. I'm reading this new slide, being surrounded by people who share principles and values. And it's like, I kind of like the idea of the Gardening Gardeners program being exactly that, because there can be thousands of Gardening Gardeners programs, and then people can find the one that's an exact match for their principles and values.
Yeah. And in their area, I think a lot of people coming to Montana, it seems like it's far away. So if we could have these programs going around the world, that would be really neat, because I know there's a lot of people that would love to learn and come to your place, but coming to Montana is too much.
Yeah.
You know? So I think that'd be really, really cool. And it's so nice being around people who get it, who, you know, think that growing your own food has value and thinking eating organic is worthwhile, and think that taking the time to make your own stuff is meaningful. so many people that I hang out with, they're like, why would you do that? Doesn't that take a lot of time? Why would you bother? And so it's really fun to come to your place or go to a permaculture event and hang out with people that already get it. It's really neat.
Yeah,
I finish with
I
this.
feel like the conversations are so much more delicious, and it does seem like if you're with muggles, with the people that are not permaculture people, then I don't know. A lot of the conversations are about the sports teams and beer and things I don't give a shit about. Anyway, Andres, you were saying?
I wanted to finish with this because, yeah, I think it wraps up really well with the idea of responsibility and obligation as poison. Like having people around you doing something that they don't want to do will kill the project no matter what. So, but on the other hand, if you're surrounded with the people that you want, you end up what's happened with the boot camp with a bunch of people getting married and stuff. So
Yeah.
I think that's the best example of the gardeners working, and it's that it has produced families in by the ton. So
That's so cool.
All right. Is this the end? Is this the last slide?
there's more, but we can end it here.
Okay, let's end it here. If you like this sort of thing, come on out to the forums at permies.com, where we talk about gumption on the homestead, homesteading, and permaculture all the time.
All the time.